this is a genuine answer for me. My biggest disappointment, I can't believe I'm saying this, is Dennis Smith Jr., because I was thoroughly convinced of two things heading into the season. One, that his issues were 95% in his head. And two, I thought that the coaching staff would get through to him in a way to sort of correct those things. And I thought also the fact that this is a contract year, and I think DSJ cares maybe about trying to get that bag. I thought we would see Dennis Smith Jr. come out and like win the starting job. I thought he would play well. And it's easy to blame it on injury. He's only played the one game, but I'm not blaming it on injury because he looked like a guy who had never run an offense before in preseason. And so, yeah, I would say that is my personal biggest disappointment.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, I wasn't quite as
you were not
on Dennis Smith Jr. as you were.
Just say it. Just fucking own it. It's like shove it in my face. It's fine.
I think everything that you wrote in your newsletter was full of shit. And no, it was the thing with me with DSJ where it's like, all right, I'm skeptical. I just see him as the same player. I could see him getting playing time if he really asserts himself in practice and preseason. Didn't really happen. For me, he's more just like salary you move in a trade to make something work if you have to.
At this point, yeah, because he ain't getting like what is he in the rotation? Is he the 13th man in the rotation right now?
I mean, honestly,
I'm not even being facetious.
No, I agree. But is there a compelling reason to play him ahead of Jared Harper or Theo Pinson that's not we're trying to up his value for the trade deadline reason?
Forget about Harper. I mean, just if you count the guys who are injured right now, it's just I'm looking at the list real quick. Barrett, Randall, Bullock, Robinson, Burks, Payton, Toppin, again, assuming everybody's healthy, Knox, Rivers, Noel, that's 10, Quickly, 11, Frank, 12. So Dennis Smith Jr. highest would be 13th.
Yeah. And one thing I've been wondering, and this is obviously not the first time that this conversation has occurred, but the idea of swapping DSJ for Monk comes back to my mind, especially considering how Malik Monk has yet to appear in an NBA game. And
this season, yeah.
Right. And it's kind of like, well, if you're going to have someone who's struggling in New York and can't really play even when he's healthy, sending him to where he's from in North Carolina makes some sense. And then sending the guy who went to Kentucky, who's not seeing any action whatsoever, makes sense to send him to UK.
I forgot he
NBA.
went to Kentucky for a second.
Right. So again, like, this is not a significant move. It's the type of deal where it's like, well, like neither of these guys is going to make the rotation anyway, so it doesn't necessarily matter. And the Knicks do have the point guard depth if you account for Harper and Pinson. That sort of kind of popped into my head recently.
No, that's an interesting one. What's your biggest disappointment?
So it's going to be, this might be a cop out of an answer, but my biggest disappointment is honestly injuries because we've seen almost half of the roster get hurt early. And the thing is, that just happens in the NBA. When you start seasons, guys get banged up. In the flow of the season, things work out. But a lot of times just adapting back to an NBA schedule, especially since for some players, they played 4 months ago, 5 months ago. For others, they haven't played really in 10 months. So it's tough to manage that and get back into the swing of things. And every year, especially ACL tears, injuries can occur more frequently in the first quarter of the NBA season. And it also kind of opens up because there's a different dialogue about how, obviously we've heard with Tibbs and how players are used and the minutes loads. Look, I
can't with this.
There's no.
I can't.
Yeah,
I want you to say what you're going to say. This is the most absurd. I want you to talk about it, but I just want to note it for the record. This is the most absurd waste of time, nonsense conversation for people. Like, I thought of an analogy that would get me canceled, so I'm not going to say it, but I'll share it with you after the podcast is over.
Sounds
but it's like, oh God. It's like having something really, really, really great happen to you. And then afterwards you're like, oh, that was over too quick. That stunk. I just want to give it all back. No, just be happy. The guy's playing the best players the minutes he's playing. They're playing 48 minutes a game, averaging 37 and change. Come on, it's the same shit as Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum averaged last year. And those guys are smaller and older and higher usage players. I'm sorry. This is absurd.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, there's no evidence that shows that playing someone 38 minutes per game significantly puts them more at risk than, say, 32 minutes per game. It just does not exist. And it's the sort of thing where, yes, all of these guys are getting hurt, but it's not necessarily because of an insane thing with minutes. Like, take Spencer Dinwiddie, for example. Spencer Dinwiddie tore his ACL partially, and he played in the games leading up to the third game of the season when he was hurt. He played 20 minutes, 29 minutes, and then when he got hurt, he'd played 15 minutes. That's not because of minutes being logged. That's just because of an injury that happened. It's freak injuries. That's the thing. If you say that Tibbs playing these other guys such an exorbitant amount of time puts them further at injury, it's arguing in bad faith for a ridiculous conversation, because you can get hurt within the first few minutes of a season. Julius Randle fucking broke his leg in the first game of his rookie season, and it wasn't because of minutes, and it wasn't because it's also asinine to me to argue about it, because it's just like I said, it's arguing in bad faith. And
but it's also if they weren't first and exactly. Right. Do you want to play to win, or do you not want to play to win? Who's
backing up Julius Randle while Obi Toppin is on the shelf from an injury, from a calf strain, the first game of his rookie season? Who's going to back him up? You're not going to have Kevin Knox in there when Julius Randle's going off. He's playing 44 minutes against the Cavs, and you know what? They got the win, John. They won. Like, that's why you keep him in there. I can understand for the Raptors game, right? Maybe when things started to slip away and there was a moment where Julius got hurt.
I'll hear that. I'll hear that conversation.
To me, that's, absolutely. And maybe, I understood why they kept him in for the free throws, because if they took him out.
And then they took him out.
Right. But if they took him out before the free throws, then they couldn't put him back in, because he would not have been allowed to come in. And I get the argument too of like, well, he shouldn't have been in the first place. Absolutely. But for games that are slipping away, empty your bench. That's fine. For games that are close, why on earth would you say, well, I played this guy maybe 2 to 3 minutes more than I quote unquote should have?
But that's the thing that annoys me, is they're first and second in minutes as we record this right now. If they were fifth and eighth and the difference in minutes per game was amounted to a minute or a minute and a half, the conversation, what I imagine the conversation is, because again, I'm not participating in this nonsense, would be a lot more, muted. And I'm sorry. Okay. Can we move on? I can't.
Yeah. Again, I think that injuries, it's a shame that so many of the players have been robbed of time, but on the other hand, it also showcases what these guys are capable of doing. Austin Rivers, obviously you wanted to see what he could do before, but now you're seeing what he can do. One game, sure, but you're seeing what he's able to accomplish in the absence of other players. And it also makes that contract look like even more of a steal, which it is, because it's just great. So I'm going to go with injuries on that one.